The countdown is on, everyone, to President Tinubu's first year in office, and the question is, how has he performed vis-a-vis his campaign promises last year? Join the conversation right now and share your comments with us on X using hashtag Beyond 100 Days. Remember to tag at TVC News NG and at Nifemi Oguntoye. I'm joined now by governance and development expert. He's a senior expert advisor to the African Union and director of Pan-African Center for Policy Studies in Johannesburg, South Africa, Tagbo Agbazue. Mr. Agbazue, thank you for joining us on the program. How's Johannesburg today? Mr. Agbazue, are you there? Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, Nifemi. Thanks for having me on board. Greetings, viewers. Greetings from Johannesburg. We're just entering into the winter season at the moment, but it's still quite sunny and the weather is fine.
You're welcome on board. Let's begin from what we can roughly call the global perception of this administration in the past year. Recall that President Tinubu became the new chairman of Ecowas just 2 months after his inauguration, and he was appointed African Union champion for human resources for health. How do you think it's fared in this regard?
Well, let me start by saying that when the president of Nigeria was inaugurated, I think that he was immediately thrown into the deep end as a result of matters arising and some of the crises within Ecowas. I think that some of his initial approach was a bit hasty by kind of like declaring or threatening aggression against Niger Republic. I think that was a bit hasty in the sense that perhaps there should have been more time for dialogue, for engagement, for consultation with the National Assembly and key stakeholders, and also, with a proper understanding of the capacity at his disposal in terms of enforcing that threat. So I think that was quite hasty. We can't cry over spilled milk, but I think one thing that was interesting is that the president realized that aggression wasn't going to work. The National Assembly didn't give the permission, and so he then resorted to more dialogue and providing an olive branch to those junta governments, and I believe also influencing some of the the removal of some of the some of the bans against that were proscribed against Niger Republic.
But ECOWAS, under his leadership, has been heavily criticized for its handling of the recent coup d'etat in the sub-region, particularly leading to the historic exit of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. You've expressed how hasty you think some of those decisions were. What do you think he can take the blame for these three countries leaving the continent, bearing in mind that some of these had happened even before his emergence?
Well, I don't think you can put the entire blame on him. I think that will be ill-conceived. There were already certain sentiments about ECOWAS, certain sentiments about what you call the colonial masters and their role in the development or lack thereof in those jurisdictions. I think that, however, the approach that was taken kind of incensed, those juntas more, and they felt like, we don't want to do as you say, we want to do as you do. And remember that some of the initial controversies around the election, around some of the qualifications of the president of Nigeria and the like, did not create that sort of confidence in the international community. But it's great that some of those controversies have now been dispersed with, and now it's down to the governor, to the business of governance.
I'm sure you've also heard of accusations of operating under Western influence, particularly for stakeholders from the affected Western countries. But we'll talk about that subsequently. Back at home, the issue of fuel subsidy removal continues to shape the perception and reception of its policy reforms, especially when you consider its impact on, the purchasing power of the people. There are conversations around whether or not government intervention in this regard was timely and efficient enough, and how much impact the subsidy earnings are also having on the economy. What's your take on this?
Nifemi, to be honest with you, the subsidy issue has always been a controversial one. Number one, there was a lot of secrecy. It wasn't a very transparent process. There has been issues around mismanagement, corruption. And if you have traveled widely between the sub-region, you'd see that all the petrol that is sold in bottles across West Africa are coming from Nigeria, from across the Nigerian borders illicitly. So it meant invariably that we were subsidizing the entire sub-region, which I believe was not the intention. However, benign and bona fide the thinking of the president in terms of removing the fuel subsidy, I believe that he removed the fuel subsidy in good faith, wanting actually the best for Nigerians in that regard and to stop the drain that was happening from the fuel subsidies. But then the fuel subsidies have been, over the years, one of the direct targeted interventions to support Nigerians. So with the removal of the fuel subsidy, what then replaces that? I think that we should have had, again, I think that the removal of the fuel subsidy, however good intent, however good it was intended, I think that there was not enough. There were some building blocks of foundational steps that were missing. We should have had national consultations. We should have had engagement with civil society, with business, with ordinary people. We should have had engagement with different institutions that form the value chain of governance in Nigeria to discuss what do we do when we take out this, when we remove the subsidies. What policy directives are we going to have to make sure that the value goes back to the ordinary Nigerian? So, for instance, I would have wanted to see, for instance, we're removing if we're removing for instance, let me give you an instance. If you look at our infrastructure funding for this year, 2024, about 1.32 trillion naira was earmarked for infrastructural development. And this falls short of the World Bank's suggestion of a 70% infrastructure to GDP benchmark. Currently, we're sitting at around 30%. I would have expected that the funds that were freed up from the fuel subsidy should have supported this equation around infrastructure to GDP our infrastructure to GDP benchmark. Right. I think that it would have been great, and this is what ordinary Nigerians may perhaps be wanting to hear. We've taken out the fuel subsidy, but guess what? We're going to provide uninterrupted electricity at a discount rate. We're going to do all the roads in Nigeria. We're going to put money into the health sector and into education. If we're taking out the fuel subsidy, and we have all these other direct benefits that are earmarked for the country, I think it will give the people more confidence, to be honest with you, especially more confidence to be patient, to wait for reforms and the effect of policy interventions to start bearing fruit.
The argument of this government was that the subsidy was already removed even before its inauguration, and that it wasn't captured in the 2024 appropriation bill, which is now law, and that it was just following up with that. But I hear you clearly. The presidency is also making some promises in this regard, asking Nigerians to be a bit more patient. The fallout of the subsidy removal, we are also seeing how much impact it's having on the ongoing tripartite committee conversation as to revising the minimum wage. Organized labor, as you are aware, walked out of a meeting with the federal government and organized private sector earlier this week over the proposed minimum wage figures. While labor is asking for 615,000 naira, federal government has promised 48,000, just 48,000 naira. How significant is this debate on President Tinubu's first year anniversary? And do you think increasing salary necessarily will bring the desired relief?
To a certain extent, increasing salaries will provide the desired relief, but might also then sway inflation rates up, inflation trends upwards. I think, to be honest with you, a lot of things have to happen at the same time. That's the thing. Nigeria is at a critical point where a lot of interventions need to work at the same time. We need to see it's not just about increasing salaries. We need to see an improved business climate in the country. We need to deal with issues around corruption and mismanagement. We need to strengthen our institutions. Our institutions require strengthening, both at the federal and the state levels. Strengthening in terms of ensuring that they have, first and foremost, they're properly constituted with quality appointees. They have, and that they're given the necessary independence. And I think that's where one of the challenges that we have. We have a situation where there's a lot of entrenchment rather than ensuring that we have the best people in these institutions. Remember that right now we're competing. The world is in a competition. We're competing with your Mexico, we're competing with South Africa, we're competing with Indonesia, Vietnam, even China in certain regards. And we need to ensure that we have our best people from around the country, in the proper portfolios, and that they're given the right independence, and they can work objectively with skill and care.
You know what?
And I think that...
Yes, Mr. Agbazue. I just wanted to butt in. You know what? In the first month of this administration, we had Mr. President say that we're able to save like ₦1 trillion as a result of removal of fuel subsidy. And the conversation has been, talk to your state governors. They're getting more money now. What are they doing with it? What about perceptions on public finance management and anti-corruption measures? I'm sure you're following renewed efforts by anti-corruption agencies like the FCC in recent days. Has anything really changed?
In the last 2 to 5 years, who has gone to jail as a result of EFCC's intervention? Can you name 10 prominent people who have gone to jail as a result of EFCC's intervention?
A cross-dresser just got jailed a few weeks ago for spraying naira.
But is that the primary function of the EFCC? Is that the primary function of the EFCC? Because to be honest with you, we need to have confidence in our institutions. We need to have confidence in our rhetoric. We have to talk the talk, but we also have to walk the walk and also walk the talk. The reality is that, the corruption Nigeria has always, every time corruption is mentioned, Nigeria is also mentioned in some way. The perception internationally is not, is that, well, Nigeria, the corruption, the perception is that Nigeria is always corrupt. I think also that a number of things need to happen. The police, our law enforcement, our watchdog institutions need to be strengthened. They need to act objectively. They need to act without fear or favor. That's absolutely crucial. At the moment, we hear that that former governor, that particular functionary has been invited to speak to the EFCC. But at the end of the day, yes, some of these matters get to court. but at the end of the day, I'm not sure what happens. That's, everything somewhere is lost in translation. And then it appears also that, and this is not unique to Nigeria alone, it happens everywhere, where it appears as if sometimes those that are falling out of favor are the ones that are subject to institutions like the EFCC, but those that are that enjoy favor are excluded. I liked the approach of the president in dealing with the crisis that hit the humanitarian ministry a few months back, where the president clearly distanced himself from and suspended the minister and the head of one of the heads of parastatal of the institution that was directly involved. And also the fact that the EFCC also came into the fora and so on. I think that's, provides a bit of confidence. But to be honest with you, in the long term, what is sustainable in terms of our fight against corruption? Number one is the tone at the top is absolutely critical. What kind of tone do we see being set at the top? Yes, it's a different thing to talk about corruption, but or talk about fighting corruption. But what are the processes? What are the systems? What is the value chain for ensuring that our anti-corruption laws are adhered to? We're still seeing big banks moving money without involving politically exposed persons, without the necessary anti-money laundering protocols being adhered to. We're seeing ministers moving money casually from government treasury to their personal accounts and the like. We need to strengthen our institutions. During the Obasanjo administration, a number of institutions were set up, like your Bureau for Public Procurement and the like, to ensure that that we minimize fruitless and wasteful expenditure and mismanagement of public funds. I like one of the president, to be honest with you, during his speech at the last Nigerian Economic Summit Group meeting, he said, we need to deal with income levels, because if it's going to cost you ₦1 billion to buy a property, let's say in Guzape in Abuja, we're not even talking about Asokoro or Mitama. If it's going to cost you about ₦1 billion to buy a house, how then, if income levels for both your minimum wage and also your senior officers in government, if their income levels are a joke. For instance, I was shocked to hear that a Supreme Court justice is paid 700,000 naira a month. That's too low. Then it means that without dealing with, without making sure that the earning, the legitimate earning of our key functionaries, without making sure that their earnings is commensurate.
The good thing, however, Mr. Agbazue, is that the figure you're quoting is an improvement on, what it used to be. They probably got up to 200 or 300% increase under this administration. But I must say a big thank you, governance and development expert, senior expert advisor to the African Union and director, Pan-African Center for Policy Studies in Johannesburg, Tagbo Agbazue. Thank you for joining us on the program this evening.
Thank you, Nifemi.